So as I said, as Jeff said, my name is Travis Perlman. I'm a project coordinator. I've worked for the City of Austin and the Austin Housing Finance Corporation for 5 years. Austin Housing Finance Corporation is a quasi-public entity created by the Austin City Council in the late 70s to generate solutions for increasing the supply of low and moderate housing affordable to low and moderate households in the city. Our office is located on historic East 11th Street. And anybody that wants to get in touch with us about this project or related projects can email us at that email, housingdevelopment@austintexas.gov. So what is affordable housing? Affordable housing means different things to different people. When AHFC is talking about it in regards to this project, it's really two things. It requires that the housing is income restricted, meaning the housing has to be reserved for persons that make at or below a certain percentage of the Austin's median family income, and that those units that are reserved for low-income households are rented or sold to them at a price that is affordable to them. And typically what this is meant for on the rental side is that a unit is sold, that a unit is rented at no more than 30% of a household's average monthly gross income minus utilities, essentially. So why is affordable housing, or what does it provide for the community? Why is it important? I'm imagining since everyone here has different interests related to affordable housing. Over the last decade, and which are as of recently gotten much worse, of course, unfortunately. But what does it provide for a community at the end of the day? It helps, long-standing residents remain in the neighborhood. It helps kids remain in the schools that they've been going to, and families remain in that neighborhood. It helps families stay close to families and close to civic institutions and other institutions that they frequented for years. It maintains an area's traditional character, and racial and ethnic diversity of things that make
las cosas que hacen a las ciudades interesantes y disfrutar vivir ahí. Permite enfocarnos en vivienda y enfocarnos más en cosas como atención médica, transporte, comida saludable y cosas de esa naturaleza.
For employees of nearby businesses, particularly businesses, lower wage businesses.
Empresas con salarios menores donde los individuos están teniendo dificultades.
Next slide, please. In 2018, Austin City Council adopted the Austin Strategic Housing Blueprint. And this is a strategic housing plan for the city of Austin that set very ambitious goals based on the housing need in the city of Austin, the larger city of Austin metro area. And it identified a goal of creating 60,000 affordable units, affordable to households earning less than 80% of Austin's median family income over the next 10 years. And so, as I said, this was adopted in 2018. And so the goal was to create those 60,000 units affordable to those households by the end of 2028. In addition to the citywide 60,000 unit goal, City Council also adopted district level goals. This project that we're going to be talking about tonight is in Council District 1, and that has a 10-year goal. So how has your neighborhood been changing? How's the neighborhood that this project that we're going to talk about tonight been changing, and how does that affect housing need? So the project at 3515 Manor, which is located in 78723 zip code. As you can see on this chart, we've got three sets of data. Blue line being median home values, orange line being median rent, and the gray line being median household income. And these are for the last
El
5
gris es el ingreso mediano. Esto es por los últimos 5 años en
US Census American Community Survey. And as we can see, kind of just right off the bat, clearly median household income in this zip code is not keeping pace with median home value, making it more and more difficult for individuals, for households in this area to afford to purchase a home. What we do see is it does appear over the last 5 years to approximately be keeping pace with the median rent increase. But I think as we will go into the next couple slides, and what we will see is that trend baked within that increase in median household income is the fact that income classes don't, the rate at which income classes increase their household wealth is not equal across different income classes. So meaning wealthier people, it's easier for wealthier people to get wealthier than it is for less wealthy people, you know, to get more wealthy at the end of the day. And so I think as we go into some of this data, that's what we will see. Next slide, please. And this is kind of what I just mentioned. And so again, in the 78723 zip code, we have the median value income class. And so what we see over the last 5 years on record very clearly is that the lowest income households in this area has decreased somewhat significantly. So respectively, households earning less than 25,000 and 75,000 respectively have decreased by
$75,000. Bajaron un 17% y 26%, mientras que los más fluidos han incrementado por un porcentaje de 131%. Entonces lo que vemos aquí es esencialmente las personas con más riqueza están entrando a este código postal y básicamente los ingresos.
Next slide, please. And so how does this affect the racial and ethnic demographics of this area? Knowing that especially the low income, the households of color typically have a higher proportion of being low income households as well. It's really no surprise kind of the trend that we see here. Again, you see kind of median home value and median rent in dark blue and orange there at 37 and 18%. And over that same time period, we see about a 10% decrease in the Black household population. And then again, about 11% increase in the Hispanic household population. Over the same time period, we see we see an 18% increase in the non-Hispanic white households in this area. But what we do see is a significant increase in individuals describing themselves as other two or more races, and I think included in this category also is Asian. Actually, but I'm not having some challenges, you know, keeping our Hispanic households and Black households that have traditionally lived in this area in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the project area. I'm assuming most people on here are probably familiar with the project area. You probably either live nearby. Just a second, y'all. I'm getting messages that people are having trouble hearing me. Can everybody hear me?
Travis?
Yes.
Travis, we can hear you. It's just kind of, you're kind of cutting in and out. So I don't know if you have your camera off, but.
My camera is off. I may have to switch over to my phone. Just a second.
While we're waiting for Travis to make the transfer to his phone to improve the audio, let me just remind everyone that if you have comments or questions, we're encouraging you to do so through the chat function. You can see it at the bottom of the screen of the Zoom. Just go ahead and type in whatever comments or questions that you may have. Thanks. I'm sure Travis will be back in just a moment.
Okay, can everybody hear me now?
We can hear you, Travis. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry everybody. So as you can see from the project, again, this is in Council District 1. This project is approximately 3 acres at the corner of E.M. Franklin Avenue and Manor
de
Road.
E.M. Franklin Avenue y Manor Road.
This property is an assemblage of 2 parcels, one that we own currently and one that we'll close on in the next month. One of them was a private transaction. The other one, as I'm sure many people are aware, was a purchase from the Public Works Department to the Austin Housing Finance Corporation. And we're just finalizing that transaction now. Obviously, this is across the street from the Mueller development and the variety of different amenities that are at that development. It's an area that has good access to high frequency transit and is planned for future high frequency transit, and that it's a connection, it's a station area for 2 future Purple Line routes in this area. Next slide, please. Next with y'all. So we're going to start from a high level and talk about some of the development priorities that we want to achieve on this site and start to get y'all's feedback on that. And so again, I kind of spoke about AHFC's mission, and then really we're trying to accomplish 3 development priorities on this site. One being providing mixed income, family-friendly housing with deep affordability, and this would include 90% of units in a future apartment building being reserved and leased to households earning at or less than 80% of Austin's median family income, which would be just shy of $80,000 for a household of 4. And then 50% of total units being reserved for households at or below 50% of the Austin median family income. So it'd be just shy of $50,000 for a household of 4. So a household of 4, you can think of a typical two-parent household with 2 children potentially. And so the 50% MFI units obviously is the much deeper affordability than the 80% MFI. We're also going to be requesting that 50% of the total affordable units to be developed on this site are multi-bedroom units, so 2, 3, and 4-bedroom units. And that any affordable housing that is going to be developed on this site that is prioritized for individuals at risk of displacement from this area, or individuals that have been previously displaced from this area and would like to return. The second development priority that we're trying to achieve on this site is the incorporation of a significant homeless housing contribution for the city. So again, to provide affordable housing on site, non-residential space, and support services incorporated
Espacios de servicios para un
for a nonprofit who works in this area, who manages homelessness and manages properties and things of this nature, that has a variety of support services on site. And so through this process, we're looking at this development opportunity as an opportunity to combine both of these uses on the site. And as we talk about the development concept a little bit more this evening, we'll get an idea of what that could look like. And then the last development objective, and this is kind of true for all of our development projects that we've done thus far, and that's ensuring responsible stewardship of city funds. And what that means is ensuring that we are not spending, that we're getting the best value for the money that we're spending. Because at the end of the day, as I mentioned, the housing need in the city is great. And affordable housing is subsidized housing more than anything, especially deeply affordable housing. And so that requires money. And at the end of the day, there are limited funding mechanisms, and we have limited funding at the city. So it's important to us through these development projects that we ensure that our funds go as far as they possibly can, given those limited funds. Next slide, please. And so this is a rough massing that we put together, and this is an example of what this development could look like on this property. What I will say is this is to be used as a general example for the purpose of guiding these public conversations, that this development program and this development concept, I think, probably represents the maximum building envelopes and the general massing that would be expected to be seen on this site as part of this development project. But in terms of any architectural features, orientations, or distributions of kind of to tell us what they think the best way to develop the property is. And so essentially we're looking at developing this property as two separate buildings. One, the building A, the larger building, being about 140 to 180 deeply affordable, family-friendly, multifamily units, again, addressing that first development concept. And then the smaller building, building B on the corner, being the homeless housing component, anticipated to provide approximately 60 multifamily rental units, again, reserved for persons exiting homelessness, and approximately 8,000 square feet of ground floor non-residential space, again, for on-site support services and staff. And then again, as I mentioned, all affordable units in this project, first and foremost, will be prioritized for households at risk of displacement and those previously displaced from the area. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the project's timeline and the proposed process. We do have a truncated timeline, and the timeline that we're working on now is largely driven by the December 2nd date on this timeline. The inducement resolution date that I'll talk about in a moment. But right now here, we're on October 13th. The first public meeting, we're anticipating having 3 virtual public meetings over the next 3 months in November and December. We plan on going to the AHFC Board of Directors, which is the Austin City Council under a different designation, on November 18th to form corporation formation that we will then do what's called a bond inducement resolution, and subsequently an application to essentially reserve bonds in the future to finance this affordable housing development. And again, so getting back to the December 2nd date, this property that we're talking about tonight is located in what's called designated by HUD, which is the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, as a qualified census tract. And what that means essentially is it meets certain criteria related to poverty and things of that nature. And that designation has a variety of different implications, but one of those is that any project that's
Entonces, cualquier proyecto que sea desarrollado durante ese censo y que es financiado,
which is a federal program administered through the IRS and also state housing finance agencies. And it's really the largest funder of affordable housing and has been since probably the mid-'80s in the United States. And it's anticipated to be what the primary funding mechanism that we use to finance this project. It will provide about $17 million of free equity into this project to make the project possible. And as I mentioned, the qualified census tract designation is important because what it does allow is it allows us to receive more equity for this development. That's 30% more equity. And so essentially we'd be looking about $3 to $4 million of equity, free equity coming into this project, which means essentially the city of Austin and the funds that we use, which into the project and spend that money elsewhere on other projects. So again, that QCT status, it changes from year to year, and it is going to expire at the end of this calendar year. And so we're trying to lock that in before it expires at the end of this calendar year. And so that's kind of what that December 2nd meeting is to lock in that status. Following that inducement resolution at HFC board, we'll convene for a third and final meeting, and then work over December to kind of finalize an RFP to be released in January. And RFP is a request for proposal. That's a competitive solicitation that we'll use to identify a development partner to develop the property. Next slide, please. Typically, these RFPs are open for 60 to 90 days. We anticipate having it open until March of 2022. We anticipate having HFC in public evaluation in May. And then ultimately we're having the HFC executive team recommend a preferred proposer to the HFC board of directors, which again, the board of directors is city council under a different designation. And that board of directors we're anticipating taking action and selecting a preferred proposer following the solicitation in July of 2022. We would then, HFC would then begin negotiations with that selected proposer with the goal of executing agreements to develop this property in October of 2022. Following that, that developer would move forward with pre-development, zoning, development review, and then ultimately construction, with updates provided to stakeholders periodically throughout that time. And essentially construction for this project is anticipated to be completed and the project occupied in 2025. So what can you expect out of this process? You know, why are you here? You know, how will your feedback be incorporated? I think that's probably really important for y'all to know. And so I think this public, again, we have 3 public meetings planned. We anticipate to be an iterative conversation over the next 3 months with the public. And essentially in this first community meeting today, you know, I'm introducing us as an organization, our mission, our initial development proposal, and starting to get initial community feedback from y'all on those development priorities, the concept, and then also to begin daylighting and identifying community priorities and we received up until then that and how that public input, how we anticipate incorporating that public input into the development ultimately. And then we will get additional feedback through that second meeting and following that second meeting on how well y'all feel that we incorporated y'all's feedback into the development proposal. And then we're going to continue to suss out things that maybe we missed the mark on, things that may be community priorities and concerns that went unaddressed, to hopefully bring back in that third and final meeting a pretty well vetted development, semi-finalized development concept that will ultimately guide the solicitation to be released in
Y
2020.
solicitación en el 2022.
As the result, and to kind of wrap up that last third meeting, again, we're trying to tie up any loose ends that we may have missed in the first and second, particularly the second meeting. Next slide, please. So I think I'm gonna turn this back over to Jeff, right?
Yeah, that's probably at that point. Thank you, Travis, so much for powering through the technical difficulties. I also want to appreciate the folks who are on the chat who have who stuck with us. We regret the technical difficulties, but certainly we want to be able to answer whatever questions or things that came out of the presentation that you needed further information about. Let me remind you that if you want to share a comment or you have questions, you can use the chat feature. We may also ask that you text your question or comment to 3515 Manor. That's 3515 MANOR or 512-580-8850. And then you'll be able to post your question and or your comment about the project for us to move forward. If I could ask for us to move to the Menti slide, please. Well, this is something that we're doing that's a little bit different than we have done in public meetings in the past. This is an opportunity for us to get a sense of those primary concepts and ideas that tend to bubble up from these kind of meetings. Through the Menti website, we're asking you to go in to let us know what your thoughts about the proposed development concept are. And then that will generate for us a word cloud that shows what concepts or ideas tended to bubble up most from the people participating in the discussion this evening. So the question that we have for that we would like to hear from you for in the Menti is, what are your thoughts about the proposed development concept? And we're going to take a moment or two to get folks to go into the Menti to be able to participate in that. Could I ask to also ask for people to share what they would like to see added or enhanced or supported by the project? Those will be the two questions that we want to ask from you for the word cloud. The first being, what are your thoughts about the proposed development concept? So if you could participate in that now, I would certainly appreciate it. Also, please put in your comments or questions in the chat or through text. And as soon as we add the word cloud, we'll move on.
Vamos a tener el word cloud, nos vamos a mover hacia enfrente.
If you're looking at the screen now, you can see that some of the participation in the Menti and the word cloud is taking place now. This is very interesting, and some of the concepts that are being bandied about and included in the discussion. Some of the things we're looking at is certainly questions about affordability. Traffic issues are involved. Integration seems to be a dominant topic that people are interested in. Certainly community sustainability are also getting a lot of attention. Community viability, integration, sustainability. These are certainly topics and concepts that have been very important to housing and planning over the last several years, and are really a big part of what we're doing in terms of strategic directions in ST 2023. All right, so for the next, that was very helpful. Thank you very much for doing that. The next word cloud, excuse me, that we would like to do, and if I could have the Menti website back up again, is the question is, what would you like to see added, enhanced, or supported by this project? If you could go back into the Menti website and include your words, thoughts, concepts, so that we can get a sense of what those priorities are, we would definitely appreciate it. Let me also remind folks that we have several questions in the chat that we'll certainly be able to address tonight. Or if not, then certainly following up with you on the website. The question again is, what would you like to see added, enhanced, or supported by this project? So far, clearly community space, space for gathering, for bringing community together is certainly something that's important. Shade garden, I think that also, not only is that something for introspection and a nice community involvement, but also for community space as well, and for gathering. Again, affordability and the number of units becomes a very important part of what people would like to see added and a part of this project. That's terrific input. Thank you. Very good input. All right. Thank you so much for doing this. We will continue through this website to really encourage folks to contribute their ideas to the Menti sites. We're going to go ahead and move on to the questions and comments section. Again, I just want to reemphasize putting your questions in the chat or the text. And so we'll get to that point now. Travis is still with us. And so we'll go ahead and start taking those questions now. If I could turn to Ruben Alamon, if you have some questions keyed up to ask out of the chat, or some information that maybe was not, because of the technical difficulties, wasn't communicated during Travis's presentation. Ruben, do you have some items to share?
Yes, we actually have quite a few in the chat. Michael Manny would like to know, are we looking at two separate buildings for 3515 and 3111?
Dos para cada dirección, 35.
Yeah, so we're going to assemble the parcels. So when we refer to it as 3515, it includes both 3515 and 3511. And it will be anticipated to be two separate buildings at this point that may be developed as one, may be developed and financed as one development project.
Lauren Stanley is asking, a while ago, we and JJ Seabrook heard from the city that this property would also reserve space for a community center / amenity of some kind built into that interpretation of the FLUM. Does anyone remember that?
I don't know if that question was referred to HFC or to the other people on this conversation. I'm not familiar with that conversation, but I've just gotten involved with this property in the last year. So that conversation very well may have transpired. I would want to know more about who at the city that conversation was had with, and what to understand what kind of commitments may have been made previously.
Okay.
So I think if that person could provide some additional information about who were the parties of the city that made that commitment, so I can kind of explore that between these next two meetings, that would be useful.
Jamil Donith from Spectrum News. When was the property purchased and what was it before? Will AHFC be the sole owner of this property with a third-party management team running daily operations?
Sure. So this property, one of the parcels, about 2.5 acre parcel, the parcel to the west at 3511 Manor, has been owned for the city, I think, since 2014 and controlled by the Public Works Department. Public Works was originally going to put offices there in 2014, but due to zoning issues and among other development issues, that they never moved forward with that plan.
I think you're cutting in and out, Travis.
Yeah, Travis, can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, this property was purchased in 2014 by the city of Austin, half of it controlled by Public Works. They never got around to doing what they intended to do with it. It was intended to be, as many people on this call know, the Box Bazaar project, and it was the Box Bazaar project at one time. And obviously, I think a lot of people know there was a variety of issues associated on the city side, as well as with COVID around that kind of challenged that project. In addition to that, as many people again probably know, this was one of the two sites that was put forward by the city of Austin to be considered as a potential homeless encampment. So this property has kind of unfortunately a long history of it being considered for different things, and the city never really quite maybe following through with some of those commitments, and not necessarily because of any fault of their own, and some circumstances due to just some of the challenges of this time, and then the challenges associated with the project. But our intention, HFC's intention, and obviously we spent money on this property. We spent about $1.8 million on the two properties combined. Our intention is to develop it, get it financed here next year and begin developing it with affordable housing as soon as possible.
Elizabeth Johnson is asking, can you tell us more about why the two buildings can't be one?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. And I think we'll talk a lot more about this in our second meeting. And to be honest with you, it's something that we're having conversations in real time right now with the different agencies and individuals that manage these types of developments and provide these services. And so we're learning about it on the fly as we go. But essentially, we think from a high level, and again, we'll discuss this more in the second meeting, from a high level, we believe that
You're breaking up a little bit, Travis.
Travis, you cut out again. Could you start over?
Sure. For the homeless individuals, that it can be a little daunting for them to move into a brand new apartment. You know, it's a complete change for them, and it's pretty dramatic. And sometimes some people have a lot of challenges dealing with that, and integrating into that type of a community. In addition to that, you know, the housing, while completely necessary, absolutely important, it is just as critical that it be paired with the necessary support services. And so we think that kind of separating these two developments and providing those support services, you know, kind of in close proximity to the individuals that will be accessing them, and also providing an environment where both the residents of both, particularly the homeless population, can be more successful and moving through the housing continuum and transitioning to eventually, hopefully, transition
Eventualmente a transicionarse a
housing and potentially the development, next door. I mean, ultimately, one thing I think that as a city, that as an organization, that we've gotten away from over the last decade, and I think that we probably need to talk more, is what's called the housing continuum. And so really what we're trying to do is kind of, and the housing continuum conceptually is, going from no housing to owning housing. And so really what we're doing here is kind of hitting multiple points along that continuum.
Ruben,
Yes, she's also asking, is this permanent support housing for homeless folks or a shelter?
Right now, what we're terming it is a continuum of care housing. This is a technical definition, and that the people that would occupy these units would come from the city's homelessness continuum of care, which is managed by ECHO, Indian Community Homelessness. And essentially that organization refers homelessness individuals to different developments that have dedicated these units. And so we would be pulling individuals off of, the individual being referred and directed to our this property from that continuum of care list. In a way, it is very equivalent to permanent supportive housing.
Nadia Barba, since several of us have been involved in the previous development process at 3811 Tane Hill, can that process please be compared to this one? I think I'm noticing some similarities and some changes.
Sure, compared to this one, well, I think just the development concept was the process itself. I don't know how different. So I was just say for the public engagement, we had 3 community public meetings for that project as well, somewhat similar in terms of what we were trying to achieve through the 3 meetings. I will say we left the development concept more open intentionally on that project, but we are trying to achieve a couple things on this site, particularly given, again, that QCT status that gives us additional equity, and the fact that we bought that this was previously city-owned property. We think it's a prime opportunity to include homelessness housing, because housing is incredibly expensive.
You're breaking up a little bit, Travis.
Also getting the increased equity from the tax credits. We think this is a great site for that use. And so we're coming in with more of a formalized concept from the get-go with this process and trying to vet that concept through these public meetings. So I think that's kind of the main difference in it. I will say to Nadia's question, in terms of the public evaluation, I did receive some comments from the ECMOK neighborhood plan contact team related to that 381110 help process. And so we are considering now how we can structure the public evaluation process in particular in order to allow the community to provide impact on the proposals that received in a way that has a real chance to affect the project.
Jessica Naughton, just to piggyback off this question, is asking, how is it different from permanent supportive housing? Is there a time limit on how long people can stay?
No, it's not really any different at all. It's just kind of there's some technical differences that perhaps we can speak more eloquently in the second meeting, but in general, it is pretty much the same thing as permanent supportive housing.
Elizabeth Johnson is asking, is there a specific homeless population services will target? Folks experiencing displacement due to domestic violence, families, or folks grappling with addiction, etc.?
So we haven't contemplated identifying a certain target population at this point. It could be something that we can consider and certainly open to any suggestions to that effect. I think it's something that we're going to be as I mentioned, we're having ongoing conversations now with service providers that work with these groups.
You're breaking up a bit, Travis.
Currently with them as part of this public process leading up to the finalization of an RFP. So that has yet to be determined, but as of now, we are not contemplating identifying it for a specific subgroup of a homeless population.
Kevin Autry is asking who/which organization will administer the services on site?
Yeah,
Property
good question.
managers, service center, HFC, developer, central health.
Sure. So that's going to ultimately be likely to be determined. We will likely ask proposers. This hasn't been decided yet, and we're working through what's the best way to set this up in the request for proposal. But we will likely be looking for developers to identify and partner with these local service providers that have this experience as part of their proposal. So we would be considering these groups as part of the proposals that we receive ultimately. And so that's how that will be determined at the end of the day.
Jessica Naughton is asking, how is this different from permanent supportive housing? Is there a time limit on how long people can stay?
No, I mean, I think that was kind of the same thing, not really technically any different than permanent supportive housing.
Angela Garza is asking, will they receive COC vouchers?
Yes, that is certainly something that we're considering. Vouchers, we're finding more and more really important to making these homeless housing deals work financially. And so we are contemplating as part of this solicitation, potentially including a commitment, considerable amount.
Travis, you were breaking up again. Can you repeat the last part?
We're anticipating probably committing a significant number of continuum of care vouchers as part of this development project to the winning proposer.
Angela Garza is also asking, will you encourage net zero renderings or LEED certified renderings?
So I think that's getting to sustainability. You know, sustainability typically has not been of the last 3 development RFPs that we put out. It has not been like a stated development priority. Certainly, that's something that we can consider. Obviously, there's costs associated with that. I will say, just in general, our land development code is very rigorous and ambitious when it comes to sustainability in comparison to a lot of our peer cities. And so those standards will kind of be implemented to a degree from the get-go. In addition to that, it's likely that this project will be smart housing certified. I believe that requires an Austin Energy 2-star green building certification. And so there's ultimately will be some sustainability built into this. But as of right now, we're not currently anticipating identifying that as a development priority.
Will you incur, oh, I'm sorry, there are PACE grants for commercial. I think we're pretty caught up, Travis.
So Ruben, are we at the end of the questions?
I believe so.
Okay. So if anyone else wants to pose a question in the chat, please, this is your opportunity to do so. We're going to take a couple more and then we'll move on. But please, if anybody else has some other questions, please let us know now. If you have questions that come up after we end the meeting tonight, or you want to share with others, please know that you can call us 512-580-8850 and leave your comments or questions there on the voicemail about the project. Also, feel free to email us your feedback or to share with others about the project to housing development, all one word, at austintexas.gov. And we'll be continuing to receive those comments and questions even after we end up tonight. Ruben, are there any other questions that have come in?
Yes, Angela Garza is asking, will you try for PACE grants?
So Angela, I think you're going to have to, I don't know anything about PACE grants. I don't even know what PACE grants are. So Angela, I think maybe you can connect with me offline and kind of clue me in on what that is a little bit. And we can discuss that, if you wouldn't mind.
She is happy to do so.
Ruben, is that it?
Yes, sir.
Again, thank you everyone for participating and sticking with us through the technical difficulties. We're certainly going to continue to work on those. Please feel free to join us for the next meeting on November 10th, in which we will be sharing some of the information that we've gleaned from this meeting and also open ourselves up to other questions as we go forward. I really would encourage everyone to, when you leave the meeting, to take the survey on the public input site where this meeting is being hosted. It will take no more than 8 to 10 minutes to complete, and it really does mean a lot to us and to the city to be able to get a good idea of your thoughts and how the meeting went and things we can improve on in addition to the technical problems. But again, on behalf of the Housing and Planning Department, I want to thank everyone who joined us today. I want to thank the Housing and Planning staff that made this meeting possible and who worked so hard and did such a terrific job. Everyone's perspectives and opinions will help ensure that we will move forward in a way that fits with the community and what the community wants for this project and other projects here in the city. Please, again, take a look at the survey. It'll be open until October 31st. And I just want to remind everyone again that a recorded version of this meeting will be available for replay on the project's website on speakupaustin.org/3515 Manor Road. speakupaustin.org/3515 Manor Road. Thanks again for everyone participating tonight. And we look forward to hearing from you more and seeing you on November 2nd. Thank you very much. Bye.